Welcome to another episode of Living Fire. Subscribe now so you never miss out on any of our latest uploads. Well, let's get into the video. Having kids is a major financial decision. We strive to provide the best for our kids. So let's see how much expanding your family may cost you. The cost of raising a child until age 17 is $233,610 on average. Low-income married couples spend $174,690 on average to raise a child. Low-income single parents spend $172,200 to raise a child from birth until age 17. The average amount spent on raising a child in the urban West is $245,460. A vaginal birth costs $10,413 on average in Alaska. The average cost of daycare for an infant is $20,415 in Massachusetts. Raising a child to age 18 in Germany costs approximately $176,000. 59% of millennial parents underestimate the cost of raising children. So does it sound expensive? Well, don't worry. Not everyone spends that much money, but it is a rough estimate that will motivate you to start saving. While this is not something we are comfortable putting a price on, it is still practical to financially evaluate a child's financial impact. So let's take a look at all the numbers in more detail. The average cost to raise a child. The United States Department of Agriculture has issued a report regarding the expenditures on children. After tracking the expenses over the years, in their latest report, they have calculated the following average costs. Number 1, the cost of raising a child through age 17 is $233,610 on average. If you are a parent with an organized spreadsheet of all your expenses, you may have found that your costs were significantly lower or significantly steeper. Now you might be wondering, how much does it actually cost to raise a child then? The report estimates the expenses as they correlate to the number of primary caregivers. There is a different average for married couple families where there are two parents. There is a different calculated amount for single-parent families, those with one primary caregiver. Then, the income bracket also gets taken into consideration. Married couples before tax income. Lower class income, less than $59,200. Middle class income, between $59,200 and $107,400. Upper class income, over $107,400. Single parents, before tax income. Lower class income, less than $59,200. Middle and upper class income, over $59,200. Naturally, the report found that the expenses of raising a child were higher for middle and high income parents, as they were able to spend more on non-essentials and education. There is one more thing that can be mentioned here. The latest data estimated only the expenses as they were in 2017. We can only expect that the average cost of raising a child in 2022 will be higher. Number 2, housing accounts for 29% of the total expenses on average. Housing is considered one of the biggest expenses of raising a child. It represents 26% of the costs for high-income families, 29% for middle-income families, and 33% for low-income families. This category includes mortgage payments, property taxes, home repairs, rent, utilities, furnishings, and equipment such as house appliances. However, bear in mind that if you are already a homeowner with an extra bedroom, you probably won't see a drastic increase in expenses. Your utilities will be higher, and you will likely need to buy new furniture. You might also have to replace and repair things in your home more often. Parents who need to move into a bigger home see their housing expenses increase more significantly. Number 3, food accounts for 18% of the total child rearing expenses on average. Housing and food are some of the main expenses for all families, and while food is the second largest expense for low-income and middle-income families, it is the third largest for high-income families, but we'll get to that later. As children age, food costs increase. Teenagers are the most expensive to feed, whereas the food costs associated with babies and toddlers are the lowest. However, parents that use formula can expect higher food costs on average. Number 4, childcare and education account for 16% of all expenses. This category includes tuition fees, supplies, books, babysitting costs, etc. We already mentioned that the cost of childcare and education is the second highest expense for high-income families. This happens mostly because high-income families can afford to enroll their children in schools with more expensive tuition. Interestingly, more than half of the families didn't report any expenses related to childcare and education. Nearly 26% of lower-income married families have this expense. We can only assume that part of them can't afford to pay for childcare, and some have a stay-at-home parent. Number 5, transportation represents 15% of all expenses on average. If we look at expenses as they correlate to the child's age, transportation costs the most for teenagers. After all, teenagers can get a driver's license, so this in turn means that some families buy a vehicle for their children and include them in their insurance. And speaking of insurance, according to the latest statistics, the average car insurance cost is the highest for teenage drivers. Number 6, healthcare represents 9% of the total child rearing expenses. This category includes every out-of-pocket expense. These can be deductibles and premiums that aren't paid for by the employer or another organization. As was the case with some of the previous expenses mentioned, this too increased as the children grew. Though we are not surprised about the high healthcare costs, if there's anything we learned from looking at healthcare spending statistics, it's that taking care of your health can bankrupt you. So at what age do the kids require the most money? We would have to say that taking care of teenagers is the most expensive in general. Number 7, low-income married couple families spend $174,690 on average to raise a child. We already mentioned that families with a before-tax income that is less than $59,200 are considered low income. On average, they spend less than middle-income married couples, whose average expenses amount to $233,610. Number 8, high-income married couples spend $372,210 on average to raise a child. Married couples whose before-tax income is higher than $107,400 spend $372,210 on average to raise their kid. So how much do rich people in America spend on their children? Well, Bill Gates' daughter is a talented equestrian and the proud owner of a $5 million condo. No wonder the average expenses of high-income families are significantly higher. Number 9, low-income single parents spend $172,200 to raise a child from birth through age 17. Single-parent families with low incomes can't afford to spend much on items that aren't of primary necessity, so their expenses are lower in general. It's noteworthy that child support payments are included in this estimate. Number 10, high-income single parents spend $319,020 to raise a child on average. As was the case with high-income married couples, single parents with middle and high incomes have greater expenses. The average amount they spend also exceeds $300,000. High-income families spend almost double than low-income families. And when we compare the amounts, it does put into perspective how bad U.S. income equality is. Number 11, the average amount spent on raising a child in the urban Northeast is $264,090. Obviously, this is notably higher than the overall national average. To raise a child in the urban Northeast, a low-income family spends $204,840 on average. A middle-income family spends $264,090 on average. A high-income family spends $407,490 on average. Future parents should consider the cost of living in the area where they will settle. That way, they can determine their expenses more accurately. Number 12. The average amount spent on raising a child in the urban West is $245,460. The urban West is the second most expensive region for parents. To raise a child in the urban West, a low-income family spends $186,270 on average. A middle-income family spends $245,460 on average. And a high-income family spends $387,810 on average. Number 13, the average amount spent on raising a child in the urban South is $232,050. For parents in the urban South, the average is almost the same as the national average cost of raising a child. These are the numbers for raising a child in the urban South. A low-income family spends $175,290 on average. A middle-income family spends $232,050 on average. A high-income family spends $366,360 on average. Number 14. The average amount spent on raising a child in the urban Midwest is $227,400. In the Midwest, the total cost of raising a kid is below the national average. To raise a child in the urban Midwest, a low-income family spends $169,920 on average. A middle-income family spends $227,400 on average. A high-income family spends $363,000 on average. Number 15. The average amount spent on raising a child in rural areas is $139,020. The total cost of raising children is lowest in the rural areas of the United States. The estimates are that to raise a child in rural areas, a low-income family spends $146,310 on average. A middle-income family spends $193,020 on average. A high-income family spends $280,080 on average. The total costs in the Midwest and the rural areas of the USA are lower because housing, childcare, and education costs are lower in these areas. Most expensive and the cheapest states to raise a child. Now that we have established the differences in expenses by region, it's time to get a bit more specific. Number 16. Daycare for an infant costs $13,404 on average in Hawaii. Sounds steep? Well, don't worry. Once your child turns 4, you will only need to pay $8,724 for daycare. And this is not the only thing that costs a lot in Hawaii. You will need to shell out a fortune on housing, healthcare, and groceries. The only thing that can be considered affordable in Hawaii, which is debatable, is childbirth. Vaginal birth costs $5,743 on average. A C-section costs $8,265 on average. Still, Hawaii is considered one of the most expensive places to raise a child in America. Number 17. The average cost of vaginal birth in Alaska is $10,413. If you are planning to have a kid in Alaska, well, you are going to have to start saving, even to give birth. A C-section in Alaska will cost you $14,528 on average. Alaska is considered one of the most expensive states in terms of healthcare. And everything else is expensive too, such as housing, groceries, and clothing. The average cost of groceries for a family of 3 is $5,997. That is the 6th highest average in the U.S. Those who plan on bigger families need to bear in mind that the average grocery bill for, say, a family of 5 would be even higher. Number 18. The average cost of daycare for an infant is $20,415 in Massachusetts. Daycare costs don't seem so bad in Hawaii now, right? Well, the average cost of groceries in Massachusetts is $6,172, almost the same as the average healthcare costs, $6,679. Number 19. The average daycare cost for a 4-year-old in Arkansas is $5,348. The Midwest region has proven to be the most child-friendly area. Daycare for an infant costs $6,726 on average in Arkansas. The cost is lower for a 4-year-old, averaging at $5,348. This makes Arkansas one of the least expensive places to raise a child. The average costs of vaginal and C-section birth are also relatively low in comparison to other states, $5,600 and $8,037 respectively. Number 20. Daycare for an infant costs $5,307 on average in Mississippi. Mississippi is among the 10 states with the lowest vaginal delivery costs on average at $5,605. Healthcare for a family of 3 would cost $5,054 on average. Clothing and groceries are also deemed to be affordable. Daycare for an infant costs $5,307, whereas daycare for a 4-year-old costs $4,670. Mississippi has some of the lowest costs of daycare in the USA. And with that, we've reached the end of this video, all about how much a child costs. If you enjoyed this episode and found it helpful, don't forget to give us a thumbs up and to subscribe to our channel for more content just like this. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.